What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again. And this time we are here with Øystein of the almighty Borknagar. Thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we are getting a lot of great things to celebrate in the history of Borknagar because we got the 25th anniversary reissue of your debut album. For the first question, I kind of wanted to turn back the clock a little bit. Like, this is the debut Borknagar album. What is the mindset, obviously, going in 1996, in cold Norway? How did this first album see the light of day? What was the idea?
It was a lifetime ago since we did a debut album. So I can't recall all the ideas, all the memories from that time. But I remember that I had a very kind of clear, firm, yet very vague idea actually about making my own musical universe in a sense. Of course, based on the the music scene I was in at that time, the music I was listening to and inspired by and all that. But I had this kind of idea that I wanted to make some kind of music that had a completely independent approach in a sense. I just wanted to do something on the side of things, outside things, to make my own musical universe. And I think that was the basic idea with the band back then. And that's why I kind of came up with the name Borknagar, which is actually a fantasy name. There is no meaning behind it or anything like that. There is some association in regards to it, but there is no literal meaning, so to speak. And that was the sole idea about the band, that I just wanted to make a musical universe, a musical journey. Maybe that's even better way to describe it, because at least looking back now, this has actually been a musical journey in a sense, and it still is.
Yeah.
And to me, the more I work with music, the more I make music, the more I travel with music in terms of touring festivals and all that, it kind of intertwines so perfectly with the life in general, because life is also a journey in a sense. You start at one point and you walk all the hills, all the steep, dark valleys, all over the, up and down, all the facets of life, and then you end somewhere.
Yeah.
Arrive somewhere. And that's basically what I wanted to do with my music back then, and that's an idea that I've kept very close, very hard, very firm for a long time. Even for all these years now, almost like, well, I started to think about or had the idea about the band back in 93, 94, I guess. So it's it's not soon 30 years as an idea, you can say.
Yeah.
So it's a long time, and yeah.
Definitely a long time. Listening to the first album, it feels good to be 3 years old again. I could tell you that much. But I'm speaking like on a sonic standpoint in terms of the sound. Did this serve as like the direction that you would later want to take in albums such as the Archaic Course or the Olden Domain, or even your most recent album, True North, for example? Did that almost lay down the groundwork, or with every album you try to take a new approach from there?
I don't know if the production in itself. Of course, we did the whole the Grieghallen studios back then, and everybody was doing using Grieghallen at that point. Immortal, Mayhem, Bursum, that was the studio back then, and that was the studio in those days. In Bergen, at least. I mean, back in the 90s, recording an album was extremely expensive. And for us kids, back then, to be able to go to a high-end studio somewhere in some kind of country or a city or something like that was out of the question. So we had to seek the possibilities that we had in Bergen. And back then, at that time, Grieghallen Studios was it for metal, basically. So that was kind of a natural thing, but also, of course, I love the sound. I mean, Pytten, the guy who ran the studio back then, is a great fellow. I mean, he's much older than me and stuff like that, and he's kind of a generation over. He, is on the age of my parents, so to speak. But still, he had this very cool approach to the music, approach to us, the kids, who was, at that time, there was a lot of, media stuff and things going on. And there was a lot of, I was never a part of all this church burning and all that, all those things, murderous and all that stuff happening. But still, we was a part of the kind of the scene. So there was some certain people, it was strange times because a lot of media also in Norway about all this criminality. But even though, Pytten back in the day had such a cool, attitude, approach towards the whole thing, he didn't care about that really. He was solely focusing on the music, the sound, and everything. So that was. It kind of just had to start that. Being a band starting in Bergen, doing a first album in Bergen, there was no really any alternatives back then. So that was basically it. When it comes to productional side of things, I love the production of the album. I just worked, I had a really deep dive over the summer with the debut album, with all the original masters and mixes and all the alternative mixes that we got and all that stuff. And I still like the sound. I kind of love it. It's maybe not up to today's standards in terms of sound and all that, but it has its charm, has its I don't know, X factor that is unbeatable in a sense.
Yeah.
So definitely it kind of in a way we set sail with that album. We started at some point. Yeah. But to me, when all this is said, to me, production has always been important, but of course very important. But for me also, the music has always been much more important, so to speak.
Always.
In my opinion, genuinely good music doesn't really stand or fall on the production in a sense. Of course it does if you have a crazy bad production and stuff like that.
Well, I've always said,
if you have a good
I'm sorry, I just
but my point sorry
no I was
no, my point is basically just that if you have a really good song, a really good whatever, it will shine through, no matter how bad the production is. Of course, there is always, you can fuck up sound and make it unlistenable. Of course, that's no problem. But in a normal, in a normal scope of things. So for me, Grieghallen was a good starting point, but it was definitely not the only point. I was very quick after we did the first album. We wanted to move forward, both musically but also production-wise. So on the second album, we went off to. And then we had a big label in supporting us, and then we went off to Germany and Woodhouse Studio to record the album there. And that was, both in terms of production, of course, but also musically speaking, I wanted a different flavor approach to the whole thing.
Yeah, well,
and we did.
And what you said about production, I've always wanted to tell artists this: production should be the hilt of the sword, but it should not be your shield. That's what I've always said. Don't hide behind production. Let it be an extension of the sword, which is mainly the song. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I was always able to tell, just as a Borknagar fan, what would be off of Epic or Origin or True North. When I listened to True North in 2019, it reminded me wow, Borknagar is once again breaking their own rules and pushing the boundaries. And you clearly have been mentioning you've been doing that since the 90s in Norway. You weren't part of the scene with Emperor or Mayhem or doing what they were doing. I feel like Borknagar was almost the rebel within the rebel.
Yeah, musically speaking, I would say so. Definitely, I think that back in the days when we did the old domain, which did very well for us and Century Media and everybody involved. The Norwegian black metal scene was pretty much down, at least in Bergen. There was not much happening with Immortal Guys, and Slave was pretty much not happening much. So, and I think that there was a certain window of time in the Norwegian scene that I think we, and also Arcturus maybe, and a couple of other bands, was, as you said, a little bit revolutionary within the revolution, in a sense, that we wanted, because I kind of early on, I'm back in the day, there was a handful of guys hanging together in Bergen, like the Immortal Guys, the Enslaved Guys, us, the guys, from different sides of Bergen, so to speak. And we was basically, everybody knew everybody, and I didn't know everybody very well, but we used to hang around on the same pubs, listening to pretty much the same music and all that stuff. But early on in the metal scene in Bergen, I got a little bit kind of, what can I say? I felt a little bit choking in a sense, because everybody was talking about being, individualist. Everybody was talking about, doing your own thing. Everybody was, thinking, and a lot of great ideas. But to me, the behavior was the opposite. Basically, everybody was making their hair black. Everybody was wearing the same shirts. Everybody was, having their leather, whatever,
Yeah.
So at some point early on in the 90s, I kind of felt that, okay, I love the music, I love the people, and I'm nothing against it, but still I want to do something outside this. I want to do something that is genuinely outside everything. For me, I've said it probably 1,000 times before in interviews, but I've always been a huge fan of Pink Floyd. I have that from my father. He was always listening to Pink Floyd, and when I was a small kid. So I have kind of almost like, I'm a hardcore atheist, but I almost have a religious relationship to Pink Floyd. To me, that's the mother of all music in a sense. I don't know why, but I just got it in with with my upbringing and all that. Yeah. And for me, Pink Floyd always had been this bright star, being on the top of the horizon, so to speak. You can hear it on the guitar tones, you can hear it on the vocals. In the first second you press play, it's just Pink Floyd. Nobody can kind of replicate it or do what they do or anything like that. They have their own approach in terms of lyrics, in terms of visuals and everything. They have made their own musical universe. And that was the same thing I wanted to kind of do with my own music. And not comparing at all, of course, but musically speaking, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of the same thing, make my own thing, completely own thing, and that's why I don't felt too comfortable in the metal scene.
Well,
back then in the 90s, because I didn't want to end up in on the same bandwagon as everybody else doing the same thing.
It started off rebellious. It started off rebellious, but it eventually morphed into becoming a clique. And I've always said my analysis of that black metal scene is I heard an interesting commentary on it from Doc Coyle, who plays in Bad Wolves, and he brought up a good point that, like, and I'm not from Norway in the 90s, so I could be, I'm just talking from, observation, but it seemed like Norway was a great place to be in the 1990s. There was a lot of prosperity that was happening. And then, but utopia, it was ideally in a utopia, but utopia means the land that cannot be. So, like, I think people just felt the natural urge to destroy a essence of harmony that they were living in and that they were blessed with. And then ultimately they became a cliche within their own rebellion. I think they ended up becoming a clique of themselves. That's my analysis of, like, that Norwegian scene in a way.
Yeah, it's not that far off, definitely. I mean, it as you said, it was a very prosperous time. I mean, it was a very inspiring time. It was a time, I mean, back in those days, we didn't have internet, we didn't have smartphones. When we talk to people, we talk to people. I mean, we met up on a pub or a rehearsal room or drinking a beer or whatever. And when we heard, I remember we heard about, there's a new band from Oslo that is amazing. It's like, oh, who is that? Emperor. Okay, cool. Have anybody heard something? No, we haven't heard it yet, but hopefully somebody will get a tape soon so we can hear some demos, kind of thing. There was some mystery to things because you couldn't check up on things in real time, You I couldn't, if I had a new song written or a new lyric or something like that, I had to tell my friends about it and brag about it in a sense. I couldn't just play it off my phone or anything like that. So at that time, we didn't live in a real time like now, so to speak. Nowadays we can check out up on everything. If I have a new mix done for a project, I can play it off anytime on whatever device I want, anytime, for anybody.
Yeah.
and that kind of, in my opinion, made a little bit of the mystery of the scene, because we was, what can I say, building tension. There was kind of healthy competition going around. We was talking about riffs. I mean, me and some of the guys, let's say, whoever, Infernals from Gorgoroth, which is still a very good friend of mine, we can sit for hours just talking about riffs and how the riffs looks like, the grips kind of thing. Because we also had an idea back in the day, I remember, in the metals, in the Bergen scene, that a riff shouldn't only sound cool, but it should also look cool in a sense. Yeah, but it's humorous when looking back on it now, but still it's a point to it, because it's something, I don't know, if a riff looks cool, it kind of, I don't know, it gives a groove to the thing. I don't know, there is connections to things.
There are certain riffs. I was just at a concert on Sunday where it was the Black Dahlia Murder playing with After the Burial, Carnifex, Rivers of Nile, so many great bands. And I mean, those riffs looked pretty cool to play. Like the way that they, were moving around that guitar, it looked just as badass as it sounded. So it completely makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with food. Food. A lot of the experience eating good food is the smell. It's the sense of smell, in a sense. It makes a lot of the appetite and stuff like that. And I think with music as well. I mean, it's especially when doing live, there has to be both a visual but also a sonic impression, in a sense. And those things goes together, in a sense, I would say. Definitely. But my main point was the fact that we was, I guess, building a myth based on a lot of tension and healthy competition, and there was a lot of, it was exciting times, basically. It was really cool times for being a musician. Yeah. In the 90s in Bergen, because there was really a vibe to the scene. There was a pub that everybody hanged out at, actually 2 pubs. There was at that time, very little places for concerts, for example. Never a concert in Bergen, almost, at least in the early 90s. I think there was a couple, like, as far as I can remember. So point is, the kids in Bergen, me included, we had to make this ourselves. Yeah. We had to create a scene. We had to create what can I say? We have to build everything ourselves, in a sense.
Definitely.
So I think all this came together and it was a very golden time, I would say. I still recall those days as glorious. Yeah. In terms of being creative, in terms of being young, in terms of making music, all those things, and it, amazing times, definitely.
Definitely. And one other question I wanted to ask you is with the release of this debut and stuff, but because it's also been 2 years since the last album, True North, and I see you in the studio now, can we be if you're allowed to say, of course, can we be expecting a follow-up to True North fairly soon, in a way?
No, not fairly soon, I have to be honest. But we haven't really planned yet. And I don't stress with new album, new songs. That's, after I've done like, how many, 11 or something albums, I kind of allow myself, the band, everything to, we do this in our own pace. We do when we feel like doing it, kind of thing. But we have some rough plans about, we're probably going to start working on a new album quite soon, actually, recording drums and stuff like that. So it's behind the curtains, things are happening, but our basic plans right now is to we have had a corona pandemic situation hanging over us for 1.5 years and stuff like that. And, we really want to, we actually discussed this a couple of days ago, the whole band, and we really want to go out there and play a little bit True North before we kind of
devastation on the
raise
nation.
The next flag, so to speak. I mean, we want to play that album to get, to, I don't know, to just play it live, so to speak. Not the whole album necessarily, but you know, to do a run for this album, because we wasn't able to. I guess you know, it was, yeah, we were supposed to do a US tour with Rotten Christ and
I had tickets to
Wolfheart
that.
and a couple of other bands.
I've
Yeah, and we had to, you know, I think everything was locked down like a Thursday or something, and we were supposed to fly into US the next Tuesday.
Yep.
So we was like, okay, shit, what the fuck?
When the president announced that he was closing the borders, the first thing I thought of, and forgive me for being selfish here to anybody watching this, but the first thing I thought of was, oh no, devastation on the nation tour. I wanted to call the White House and be like, no, we got to get Rotting Christ and Borknagar and Wolfheart into the country.
Yeah, actually, it was crazy, man. We together with our manager, we even tried. We looked at options to you know, to fly into Canada, for example, and then drive with a bus down, or you know, crazy alternative ideas like that. But you know, I guess it lasted for a couple of hours. And then we just realized that no fuck. Yeah. I mean, the whole world is locking down now. Yeah. It's not, you know, it's not doable. It's not possible. Yeah. So my point is basically that we kind of feel that we haven't done what we should do. And what we really wanted to do with True North, that we wanted to bring it out there. I mean, it's out already, has been out for 2 years or something, but we want to out and represent the album. We want out and talk with people about the album. We want out and, you know, play the songs for people and stuff like that. So before we're doing anything new or releasing anything new, so to speak. So let's see. But my best guess now, and it's not official in any sense, but we are kind of thinking about the early 23 release next album.
Awesome. I wanted to go back and ask this question. You mentioned cultivating your own universe in the world of Borknagar. You know what? I from what you're telling me, it almost seems like you could be like the dark alter ego of Disneyland in a way. You can make a whole universe with just Borknagar albums. Can you maybe see? It's kind of like two questions in one. But are your albums very conceptual? Like if people listen to True North, they should go back and listen to Winter Thrice, and then listen to Erd, listen to Universal. And can you maybe see yourselves exploring maybe other mediums to further create more of a universe, like through visual art or something?
I mean, you know, let's say my music, my albums or albums is like a mountain, and every album we have is a mountain, just to make a point of it, but it's different mountains. If you get my point. Yeah. Every mountain has a different shape, the different, you know, and some is snowy peaks, others is more like plains, and you know, so it's conceptually we've always been on the same course in a sense. I mean, it's quite simple in one way and complicated the other way, but the simple point is that I've always, you know, music is a journey, musical journey. It's kind of a parallel to my life in general. It should include all my ups and downs in life, all the facets of life in a sense. That has been my basic idea for the music. It should be fast sometimes, brutal sometimes, because life is that, brutal and fast and speedy and stress and all that. But sometimes it's also very down, it's revealing, it's almost intimate, you know, relaxed. You know, all these facets of life is something I've always wanted to bring into the music. I have a kind of a quasi-philosophic maybe idea about music being a very human artifact. I mean, cats doesn't listen to music as far as I know. Dogs doesn't listen to music as far as I know. But it's something we humans do. We are all kind of very attached to the rhythm, the sense of rhythm, since we are kind of in from pregnancy, listening to the mother heart, for example, and you know, the whole cycles of life. Rhythm is very important, and voices, talking, communication, and melody and things like that. So for me, music is a very human artifact, and I think to make the very good music, the genuinely good music, it has to include all the human artifacts, you know, all the shades of life, all the facets of life, ups and downs, brutality and tenderness, you know, all this contrast in a sense. and always moving forward. I mean, that is life. I mean, I basically lived my whole life at one place, moving around a little bit. But when I became an adult, I kind of moved back to where I grew up back in the day, and so I'm still basically on the same place as I've always been, but I'm still moving through life, and that's the same thing with my music. It should always take a step further. There is always another step to take. There is always a new horizon to see, and that has been my kind of golden rule with the band at all times. Awesome. And of course, this element of musical and what can I say, independence in a sense. To me, as a person, as a human being, independence is very important. The ability to take my own choices, to live the life according to my own free will. And that's the same with music. I don't want to bind up to conventions or popular waves of something, or if the record company pushes us to do something, they don't do it, at least not anymore, because they know it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So for me, that has been the groove of the band all the years, and still will be till the day I'm not more around, so to speak.
Well.
So I'm kind of clinging on to the true north of the band, so to speak. I mean, to the red.
I see what you did there. Pun intended.
That was kind of cheesy, all right. But
no, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Was it?
Yeah. No, because
right.
Because you know what? Because I think the album True North is a really cool title because I get a sense of imagery behind it, especially when I look at the cover. Some people said, oh, it just sounds like another, it was like, oh, let me guess, this band's from Sweden or Norway or something like that. But True North just has 10 times more meaning right now. You just stood out from every Wardruna, enslaved, Amon Amarth sort of style that there is. You brought a new meaning to the word North. I thought Kanye West was the only one who could do it, but you just did it too.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, but that's the main idea about the band. But again, I mean, there is no. I mean, even though clinging on to this basic idea, this basic philosophic idea behind the band, it's also very important value of the band, at least my musicianship and the rest of the guys in the band, to always, and that's also, I think, very natural in a human life, to explore, to test new things, to taste new foods, to travel new, climb new mountains, as an example. And that's also very important for my music, to always try to move forward, take a step further. If we're going to advance into, I don't know, for me, I'm first and foremost a musician and a songwriter. I appreciate all kind of visuals, additions in terms of music videos and live shows and all that stuff. But that is not my main doing, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've always been very skeptical towards live DVDs, for example, live shows, live streaming. And during the pandemic, people have asked me so many times, a lot of money on table and whatnot. No, I don't know. To me, it's a kind of a treason towards the live concept. I can understand that the fans want to see their bands and to see some live performance during Corona and all that stuff. But I've never been a huge fan of live, streaming myself or live DVDs myself. I have to admit, I kind of don't want to do it because it's not what I do.
Yeah.
If you get my point. I make music, I make records. That is what I do. And then I do some live shows.
Yeah.
That I also do. But, I don't know. Maybe I'm an old grumpy, I don't know. But I'm not too... I'm not fond about the idea about live streaming and all that stuff. If I don't know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But thank you so much for your time today, Øystein, and thank you for giving us a great history on Borknagar. And we look forward to finally seeing you on Devastation on the Nation in 2022. Everybody, we are here with Borknagar. Check out True North if you haven't already, and celebrate their 25th anniversary of their debut. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.